Well, hello. My name is Dr. Liz Thach, and my title is Distinguished Professor of Wine at Sonoma State University in Roanoke Park. And I teach in both the management and the wine programs. And Sonoma State actually is home to the first wine MBA in the United States. Our program started in 1995. Anyway, I'm excited to be here today. I'm doing this presentation at the request of Dr. Roy Thornton, a good friend and colleague at California State University, Fresno. And he asked me if I could give an overview of Sonoma County and the AVAs. And I actually do that frequently here, as well as Napa, since Napa's close by and a neighbor. And we have many students at Sonoma State from both counties. So anyway, I love to talk about Sonoma County. I've lived here since 2000. It's my home, and I really think it's one of the most beautiful places in the world. So what I'd like to do is begin with giving you a little bit of the geography of where we're located, and then a brief history on Sonoma wine, and then talk a little bit about some of the unique elements, but spend most of the time covering the 16 AVAs and how they're different, and also taking a look at some of the signature wines of Sonoma County. And along the way, I have a couple of little sort of participation exercises, quizzes, and questions, so that hopefully it will incite you to ask more questions as we go along. So here's the picture of where Sonoma County is located in California wine country. As you know, we're up in the north, bordering the Pacific Ocean, north of San Francisco, about 45 minutes, and also nestled up right next to Napa, Lake, and Mendocino counties. In fact, Sonoma State University services all those counties for education. And if you look at the whole state of California there, you can see that we are in the more cooler area, and then moving down to Central Coast, Monterey, San Luis Obispo, where you get a little bit warmer. And then you can also see off to the right the Sierra Foothill Appalachians. So diving deeper into Sonoma County, you can see that we actually have 16 different AVAs, or American viticulture areas, and I'll be talking about those in more detail. But as you can see, a huge amount of Sonoma County is on the Pacific Ocean, and of course that's where our cooler areas are, where we grow a lot of Chardonnay and Pinot Noir. But then we also extend further inland into the mountain ranges, the Mayacamas, and nestling up to Napa Valley, and those areas of course are much warmer. But then you'll notice it also extends all the way down to San Pablo Bay, south of Petaluma, where we're on the water again. So this creates a really unique environment, and probably one of the most perfect places in the world to grow wine grapes. So my first question for you is, what do you think the most widely grown grape varietal in Sonoma County is? So your possible answers are A, Pinot Noir, B, Chardonnay, C, Cabernet Sauvignon, D, Zinfandel, E, Syrah, F, Merlot, or G, Sauvignon Blanc. So, for those of you who guessed B, Chardonnay, you are correct. That is the most widely grown grape varietal in Sonoma County, and actually is one of our signature grapes, and something that we're known very well for. But we have other signature grapes as well. And if you look at this chart, you can see that the second one is Pinot Noir. In fact, in all of California, Sonoma County just became the #1 place for growing the most Pinot Noir. Followed by Cabernet Sauvignon, then Zinfandel, Merlot, Sauvignon Blanc, and a little Syrah. So a little bit about Sonoma County and its history. The first vines were actually planted here by the Russians out at Fort Ross in 1812, making it a pretty early region for grape planting. Obviously not as early as Southern California and San Diego, but quite early. And then the mission, which is the last Northern California mission, was established in the town of Sonoma in 1823. And of course the Spanish Padres planted grapes, the mission grapes, to make the sacramental wine. And then shortly after that, General Vallejo arrived in Petaluma, and also Sonoma. He built a house in the Petaluma Gap region and one in Sonoma, and started planting a huge vineyard in the 1830s. And so because of this, Sonoma wine is actually older than Napa Valley wine, which started in 1836. Then the oldest commercial winery was actually also founded in Sonoma, and that's Buena Vista Winery. and it's a beautiful place to visit. You ought to check it out if you haven't had a chance. And then, because of all this, Sonoma County actually became the center of fine winemaking in California for many years. However, then of course Prohibition rolled around in the early 1900s, and wineries across California closed. But in Sonoma County, we still had those that continued, but a lot of them had to convert to bulk wine. And so we did lose some of our fine wineries, but we managed to keep producing some sacramental wines for the church and selling wine for medicinal purposes, and also shipping a lot of bulk grapes back east for home winemakers. So finally, in the 1970s, we started growing some premium varietals again, and you may not know that in the Judgment of Paris, the winning Chardonnay was mostly from Sonoma County vineyards. Even though the wine was made by Chateau Montelena in Napa, they bought their grapes from Sonoma. So Sonoma has many unique attributes, and one of the things you may not know is that in terms of all of the acreage, it's about over 1 million acres, but only 60,000 of those are vineyard acres. So there's still a lot of Sonoma County that is quite wild and naturally preserved in woods and forests. Of the 60,000 vineyard acres, most of them are owned by small family wineries. And just to let you know, Napa has about 40,000, so they're even smaller. So a lot of people don't realize that Napa and Sonoma actually only produce about 8% of the wine in California. However, Sonoma has a lot of wineries, 685 wineries, but only 350 are open to the public. There's also 1,800 vineyards, and we produce about 6% of the California wine, and Napa produces another 3 to 4%. So if we take a look at this chart here, you can see that grapes are only that 6% of the whole vineyards planted to that. 9% is urban, and that's our cities. Santa Rosa is the largest. Pasture land, 36%, and forest, 49%. So as you can see, forests and woodlands pretty much dominate Sonoma County, and keeping things natural is really important. In fact, in a short time I'm going to talk about our sustainability goal. In terms of our climate and terroir, we're primarily a Mediterranean climate, which, as you know, is great for growing wine grapes. So that means we're warm and sunny in the summer, and we usually have long, wet winters. We haven't in the last few years because of the drought, but we're hoping we might again this winter. And so because of this, our average annual rainfall is anywhere from 24 to 100 inches. 24 more inland and 100 inches out near the coast where a lot of the redwood forests are. In terms of our soils, they're mainly a lot of ancient seabeds, so they're composed of clay, sand, and pebbles. And we also have some volcanic rock, and this, like Napa Valley, makes us rather unique in the world for growing wine grapes. The elevation here, of course, goes from sea level all the way up to 2,600 feet. And we do have some vineyards that are quite high up in the mountains. And of course, we have bodies of water. We have the Pacific Ocean to the west, and we also have the Russian River that runs right through Sonoma County down into the ocean, and then San Pablo Bay below. And as you know, all great wine regions have a body of water nearby, either a river or a lake or an ocean that helps moderate the temperature. But the ocean also has another huge, profound impact in Sonoma County, and that is the role that it plays in creating a maritime climate in part of the vineyards, and that is the fog that comes in. So this is a picture of the beautiful, wild Sonoma County coast. Huge crashing waves, icy cold water, great fish, and beautiful, beautiful rocky terrain with some lovely white sandy beaches as well. But what happens with the cold ocean water hitting the warm landmass is generally around 3 o'clock every afternoon, especially in the summer, is we get the fog start building up on the coast, on the edge near Sonoma, and then it starts moving inland, and around 6 o'clock, about half of Sonoma County is already covered in the fog. And then by 9 o'clock, almost all of Sonoma County, and then by midnight until early morning, we're covered in this cool blanket of fog, which is of course ideal for growing grapes because it keeps the acids fresh, keeps the fruit preserved, and it keeps the berries concentrated and smaller. And so then in the morning, the fog slowly starts pulling back again to the ocean so the sun can come out and warm up the grapes and help create just the perfect balance of sugars and acids and wonderful phenolic flavors in the grapes. And then by noon, it's usually gone, and then the whole cycle starts all over again. So because of this, we have a very unique climate in Sonoma County. And this chart compares Bordeaux, France, Burgundy, the Russian River, and St. Helena, California, and Napa Valley. And if you look at the Sonoma County, we're looking at the Russian River numbers, and Sonoma is the sort of pale gray. And as you can see, we're starting from January going through December, and we're quite cool. We're cooler than Napa Valley in January, not as cold as Bordeaux and Burgundy. But then as you see, what happens in the summer is we don't get nearly as hot as the other regions, and we have a more moderate temperature. And this, especially in the Russian River, is what produces those exceptionally wonderful Pinot Noirs and Chardonnays, and also some cool climate Zinfandel. So I mentioned how important sustainability is in Sonoma County, and in fact, just this January of 2015, Sonoma County wine grape growers set a goal of being 100% sustainable for all of the wine growers by 2019. And so that means that what we're doing is embarking on a process of having all of the different vineyards and wineries assessing themselves and then finding one of the different certifications. It could be the California Sustainable Wine Growing Certification or Fish Friendly. There's several others out there that they can use with the goal of being 100% certified by 2019. The other thing Sonoma County has done is we have also banned all plastic bags. So if you go to a grocery store or even Macy's, you have to bring your own bags. And I think this is wonderful because we're help preserving the oceans and also our landfills by reducing garbage. So let's take a look more closely at what happens in the 16 AVAs of Sonoma County. And I should mention that the 16th AVA is actually Sonoma County itself, and then within Sonoma County we have 15 smaller sub-AVAs. And to do this, I thought it might be fun if we did a little quiz. I call this my mini 5-question quiz that helps you identify your AVA preference. So to do this, what I'd like you to do is to number your paper from 1 to 5 and to simply answer these 5 questions: yes, no, or sometimes. So the first question is, I prefer my coffee or tea black. Yes, no, or sometimes. The second question is, I like the taste of scotch. Yes, no, or sometimes. The third question is, I usually avoid salty foods because I don't like the taste of salt. Yes, no, or sometimes. 4, I prefer dark chocolate to milk chocolate. Yes, no, or sometimes. And 5, I like drinking diet sodas. Now, as you're writing down your answers, you probably should know that this is actually a shorter excerpt from a longer online assessment created by Tim Hanai, and it's actually called My Vinotype. So this is free online, so later if you'd like to do a longer assessment, go ahead and take a look at that. But right now, for the sake of this short 30-minute session, why don't you go ahead and we'll just use these 5 questions, because I think it'll give you an idea. So what I'd like you to do now is add up your score. For every yes, give yourself 2 points. For every no, give yourself 0 points. And for every sometimes, give yourself 1 point. So what you're going to have then, of course, is a score somewhere between 0 and 10. And what we've done is each of these numbers mean something. I'm looking at my PowerPoint and noticing that the 10 is in the wrong place. It's actually supposed to be on the far end. But if you're 0 to 3, you're what we call Sonoma Finesse. And that means you're a hypersensitive taster, meaning that you have many more taste buds on your palate, and you probably have a drier mouth, and therefore you prefer lighter, more delicate wines such as Chardonnays, Pinot Noirs, sparkling wines, and maybe even sweet wines. You fit into 25% of the population, and therefore you're probably going to like the AVAs in Sonoma County that produce these types of wines. Now, if you happen to score between 4 and 6, you're what we call a Sonoma Generalist. I actually fit in this category myself. And that means you're a sensitive taster. So this means you're open to a broad range of styles, and you can pretty much enjoy most any type of wine varieties, whether it be light and delicate and sweet, or big and massive and tannic. And then if you score between 7 and 10, you're what we call Sonoma Power. And that means you're a tolerant taster. Robert Parker fits in this category. And I should say there's no right or wrong, it's just who you are genetically. But anybody can learn to be a brilliant taster. People in this category prefer bigger, tannic, higher alcohol wines. They usually automatically love big Cabernet Sauvignons, Zinfandels, Syrahs, and Ports, and 25% of the population fit into this category. So depending on whether you're a Sonoma Finesse, Sonoma Generalist, or a Sonoma Power, let's take a look at the appellations you may fall in love with first. So this diagram shows the climatic zones in Sonoma County, and the blue, which is along the ocean, is what we call Sonoma Finesse. These are our cooler climate AVAs, and of course this is where we're going sparkling Pinot Noir, Chardonnay, and some of our cool climate Syrah. The green, sort of inland a little bit areas, these are a little bit warmer. These are Sonoma Generalist, and this is pretty much where we're growing lots of different types of varietals, including some Merlot. We're growing some Viognier here. We're growing Muscat, Pinot Gris, as well as Sangiovese and other different reds. And then the Sonoma Power, which is the red zone, is much hotter, and this is where we're growing our big reds, our Zinfandels, our Cabs, our Malbecs, and also some of our Sauvignon Blanc, which likes a warmer climate. So this is also another nice chart. If you take a look at the wine growing regions, again, the blue on the top are our cooler AVAs, such as Green Valley, Russian River, Fort Ross, Sonoma Coast, and Carneros. And you can see most of them focus on Chardonnay, Pinot, and sparkling. And then moving down into the green, Bennett Valley, Chalk Hill, Sonoma Mountain, a little bit Sonoma Valley, the green and yellow. And you see a mix there. And then moving into the pink, orange, and red, you see our hotter AVAs, Dry Creek, Alexander, Knights Valley, Pine Mountain, Cloverdale, and you can see they're mainly focusing on Zen and Cab. So let's take a look at each of these three areas in more detail. Let's start with Sonoma Finesse. Again, we have a lot more fog in this area, we have more rain in this area, and cooler climates, which is perfect for these finicky grapes that don't like as much heat. So here's how these fall on the map. So I'm going to start sort of at Fort Ross, which, as you can see, is close to the ocean. It's one of our newer AVAs. It is a little bit warmer, but it's still quite close to the ocean. And this is where the Russians planted the first vineyards in 1812. Then dropping further south, we have the Sonoma Coast AVA. This is the largest. You can see how big it is. It's closest to the ocean, has twice as much rainfall, and this is actually an area where we're starting to create more AVAs within it because it's so large. For example, Fort Ross used to be Sonoma Coast, and now it has become its own AVA. We have another one that we're developing right now called Petaluma Gap down near Petaluma, which we think in a year or two will become another AVA within Sonoma Coast. So dropping down further, we have Carneros, which spans Sonoma and Napa counties, right on San Pablo Bay. And then moving up, we see the Green Valley, which is small and the coolest region. Very few wineries here, but lots of sparkling. And then the Russian River is probably the most famous of the AVAs in this area. And so because of that, I'm going to spend just a few more minutes on the Russian River because it's so famous. In fact, when we do consumer surveys on Sonoma County, people recognize the Russian River AVA more than any of the others in the county. So the vineyards here were established in the 1830s. It's a nice mixture of ocean sandstone and river gravel, perfect for grapes. It has a nice extended growing season. The AVA was actually established in 1883 and enhanced. There's around 15,000 vineyard acres, 80 different wineries, and over 200 growers. And this is where the home of the Judgment of Paris Chardonnay, the Bacigalupe vineyard, is located, creating that amazing Chardonnay. Where, if you don't know about the Judgment of Paris, this was a big contest that took place in Paris in 1976, and it was where wines from America were compared against the great wines of Bordeaux and Burgundy in a blind tasting. And it was very upsetting when Napa Valley wines, Chateau Montelena, using Sonoma County Chardonnay, and Stag's Leap, using Napa Valley Cabernet, beat out all of the other great French wineries. And that sort of helped put California on the map, especially Napa Valley. So moving on, let's take a look at all of you who are Sonoma Generalists. This is sort of the middle part of Sonoma with a moderate climate, producing many high quality varietals. This picture you see right here is in the heart of Sonoma Valley, and a little bit up on Moon Mountain, some of the old vines out of Monte Rosso Vineyard, which is one of the oldest vineyards in the state, dating from the 1890s. So let's take a look at the map, and you can see where this starts. I'm going to start at Chalk Hill, which is a small appellation mix of cool and warm. It's known for its chalky white ash in the soil, and it's right on the edge of Russian River and Alexander Valley and Knights Valley, so we sort of call it a moderate climate. And it does both Chardonnay and Cab and Merlot. And then moving down to Bennett Valley, this is a small area with a lot of benchland. Morning Fog is especially well known for its Merlot and its beautiful Syrahs. Then Sonoma Mountain is rocky, very volcanic soil, high above the fog line, creates some big tannic cabs and some pretty amazing Zinfandels. Similar to Moon Mountain, which is where the home of Monte Rosso Vineyard is, very historic vineyards, a lot of red soil above the fog line. And then, of course, Sonoma Valley, which is probably the most well-known here and the oldest. So I'm going to talk about Sonoma Valley in a little more detail. So Sonoma Valley is really the historical heart, center of fine California wine. This is where the Mission Fathers planted the first vineyards and where Buena Vista is located. And what's great about Sonoma Valley is it can actually grow almost everything very well. It's hard to believe that, but it does, because it runs down to the fog near San Pablo Bay and then up through the beautiful valley protected on both sides by mountain ranges. So it has the volcanic and the river gravels. The AVA was actually established in 1981 and amended several times. Has 14,000 vineyard acres, 80 wineries, and 200 growers. And the signature varietals here, like I mentioned, are many: Cabernet, Chardonnay, Merlot, and even some Pinot. So moving on to the third area, this is Sonoma Power, for all of you who love big, powerful red wines, and also Sauvignon Blanc. This is a beautiful picture of the Alexander Valley, which is right in the center of the Sonoma Power AVAs. So I'm going to start up at the top of the map because that's easier. As you can see, this part of Sonoma County actually borders on Lake and Mendocino County and Napa, and Pine Mountain Cloverdale is an AVA right up there that crosses over the Sonoma County line, and it's very high altitude, so it creates some amazing big tannic wines with lots of earthy characteristics, extreme temperatures, red soil, and they've had vineyards there since 1855. Then moving down to Alexander Valley, which is the most well-known. I'm going to come back to that because I want to spend more time on it. But moving over to Rockpile, this is a really fun AVA. It's known for its very rocky soil and big piles of rock. It used to be an old sheep ranch in 1867, and it's just very rugged. It also grows amazing Petit Syrah, as well as Old Vine, Zinfandel, and a regular Syrah. Moving down to Dry Creek Valley, this is a beautiful place, 22 miles long, old wine history, In the fall, it's got to be one of the most beautiful places on earth. All the vines are turning different colors. It looks like just a tapestry, a beautiful quilt of gold and orange and reds and dark chrism vines and leaves. Very volcanic with river gravel and especially known for its Zinfandel. And then moving over to Knights Valley, this is one of the warmest areas. It's right against Napa, and it's got really good volcanic soil. Some quite famous wineries there, such as Peter Michael. So let's take a look at Alexander Valley in a little more detail. This was named for the pioneer Cyrus Alexander, who actually founded this valley in 1841. It's very narrow, 2 to 7 miles wide, but 22 miles long. It's actually right on the opposite side of 101 from Dry Creek. And there's 15,000 acres that are planted to vine grapes, but only 40 wineries. The Mayacamas are on the east, the Mayacamas mountain range, and the coastal range to the west, so it's nice and protected, and for this reason it is warmer. So its signature grapes are Cabernet, Sauvignon, Merlot, and also a little bit of Zinfandel there, but definitely a warmer climate. So it's home to some really famous old wineries too, which I'll mention in a few minutes. So those were 15, and now the 16th AVA is, of course, Sonoma County itself. So grapes that are grown in any part of Sonoma County can be blended together, and Sonoma County can legally be put on the label. So I'd like to just end with a little bit of information on some of the signature styles of Sonoma Chardonnay. A lot of people want to know how the signature varietals of Sonoma County compare to other places in the world. I'm also a master of wine, so one of the things I had to do was judge wines blind from all over the world. So I like to pride myself that I can actually identify a Sonoma County wine blind against some of the great wines of Burgundy, like Montrachet. So anyway, what I see with Sonoma County is some very rich, supple fruit, but with lovely crisp acid that's coming from that lovely fog. There are two different styles of Chardonnays made in Sonoma County. We have the riper styles that have a lot of yellow apple, Asian pear, sort of lemon sorbet. I call them very voluptuous wines. Good examples are from Marcusson, Peter Michael, and Kistler. But then you have the leaner styles. These are more food-friendly kinds of wines with mineral notes, hazelnut, fig, and lemon peel. They're very steely with excellent acid that just cuts through the fats that you might find in some foods. And Hansel, Flowers, and Aubert are really good examples of these. There are many others, but these are especially good examples. These Sonoma Chards have excellent complexity and length. As I mentioned, they're food-friendly, but they can also age for quite a long time. So they're good buys for your cellar. Looking at Sonoma Pinot Noir, I think now Sonoma has become even more famous for Pinot Noir than Chardonnay in the last few years. We've won so many awards on this. And that's because the Pinot Noirs are just exquisite. They're very ripe, concentrated, layered with just silky tannins. And the most famous are from the Russian River, and what I find there is some signature markers of raspberry, cola, spice, very seductive. And some good examples are William Salem, Rocchioli, and Dellinger. And then you have Sonoma Coast, which are sometimes often darker, denser, with blueberry, black cherry, wild herbs. They're both elegant and complex at the same time. Costa Brown, Marcusson, and Littorai are great examples of wines from this area. And then Carneros, further south, is lighter and more playful with some strawberry and plum flavors. And Acacia, Patson Hall, and Ceja are good examples of Pinot Noirs from this region. So what I love about Sonoma County Pinot is it ranges from the very approachable to the very complex and long aging. So moving on to the signature style of Sonoma Zin. And as you know, California makes some incredible Zinfandel. We claim that is one of our main grapes of California, even though it's originally, of course, from Croatia, and then also Primitivo in Italy is a clone of Zinfandel. But in Sonoma, Zinfandel is rich, ripe, jammy, and inviting. And I find that it has a mix of both red and black berries in it. especially with a lot of blackberries, boysenberry, marionberry, huckleberry kinds of flavors going on, and even some raspberry. And peppers, spice, a lot of especially Asian 5-spice, smoke, and chocolate. You also get beautiful fine-grained tannins and a lot of elegant Zinfandels and complex ones that can last for a while. So some notable AVAs and producers are Dry Creek, Wilson, Dry Creek, Vineyards, Roquille, and Carlisle. Sonoma Valley, we have Bedrock, of course, Alexander Valley, Sagacio, an old-time producer making with vineyards from the 1800s, and Rockpile. Rosenblum was pretty well known there. There are many others, but these are just a few. And then finally, the signature style of Sonoma Cabernet Sauvignon. You know, our neighbor to the west, to the east, Napa Valley, usually wins in the Cabernet contest, and they do make amazing Cabernets, world famous. And I say the difference between a Napa Cab and a Sonoma Cab is that Napa Cabs are really elegant and velvety. And I think they're more similar to in Bordeaux and Margaux, or let's see, perhaps a Pessac-Lognan, Aubryon. Whereas I think that with Sonoma Cabs, they're more structured, and so I would go further north, like a Saint-Estèphe and even Pauillac, because Sonoma Cabs have big black currant, big tannins, black plum, coffee, herbs, and a lot of earthy notes. The other thing I like about them is they have some really good, refreshing acidity, but a strong backbone, complexity, and quite age-worthy. So some notable AVAs and producers in Sonoma County for Cabernet Sauvignon are Moon Mountain, of course, where we have the very famous Monte Rosa vineyard that produces amazing cab. Sonoma Valley, of course, Chateau St. Jean and Arrowwood. New producers like Stone Edge Farms. Alexander Valley is Jordan and Stone Street. Knights Valley, of course, is Peter Michael. And there are many others, but these are probably some of the most famous Sonoma cabs. And I would like to point out this beautiful little video. We're not going to play it today, but you can go out and take a look at it. And it's the seasons of the vine in Sonoma County, and it sort of shows the life of a wine grape. And it's sort of a nice way, I think, to end today's presentation about Sonoma County wines. And so I hope this has helped tell you a little bit more about the AVAs, the styles, the terroir, and what makes Sonoma County such a blessed space and place on earth. Thank you.